Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Health. To what does he attribute the reported 300% increase in doctors leaving New Zealand for Australia since 2010?
Honourable Tony Ryan.
Well, Mr Speaker, I attribute those reported comments to a single medical recruitment company which is in the business of attracting clients. The flow of doctors in and out of New Zealand is a long-standing challenge for a number of reasons, and ongoing in some specialties in particular. The latest comprehensive data has confirmed that since November 2008, we have over 500 extra doctors and over 1,000 extra nurses working in the New Zealand Public Health Service.
Grant Robertson.
What responsibility does he take as Minister for reports that the New Zealand medical workforce is, quote, critically understaffed as a result of doctors heading to Australia, and that as a result doctors in New Zealand have workloads that are, quote, extremely unsafe, unquote?
The Honourable Tony Ryan.
Mr Speaker, the latest comprehensive data, as I said earlier on, would indicate that since November 2008 we have over 500 extra doctors and over 1,000 extra nurses working in the New Zealand public health system. If we had an outflow of doctors of the level that member may be suggesting, we would not have that level of increased frontline staff in our hospitals. Having said that, there are challenges remaining in a number of important specialties.
Grant Robertson.
Has he received advice on the reports that doctors who are leaving to go to Australia for short periods are now moving there permanently? And if so, what did that advice say?
The Honourable Tony Ryan.
Mr Speaker, I don't recall getting any specific advice suggesting, as the member has, opposite. What I do know is that we are having increased numbers of doctors and nurses working in the public health service. So, for example, in the last 2 years of the national government, the number of doctors working at the Auckland public hospitals increased by 148 and the number of nurses by 242.
Grant Robertson.
Does he recall the statement in 2008 from the National Health spokesperson, a Mr Tony Ryle, that National's policies would, quote, slow the flood of health professionals to Australia? And given the 300% increase in doctors going to Australia in the last year, how would he rate his progress?
Well, Tony Ryan.
Mr Speaker, first of all, I would strongly dispute basing a claim on a medical recruitment company seeking to attract clients. The fact is, if there had been a threefold increase in the number of doctors leaving to New Zealand, we would not have increased the numbers of doctors working on the front line in our public hospitals by 500, nor would we have 1,000 extra nurses working in our public hospitals.
Grant Robertson.
Does he consider he is adequately funding the health system to retain doctors in New Zealand, or would he agree with the words of former Prime Minister Mike Moore, quote, when Tony Ryle talks of health issues, am I the only person who hears the theme music from Jaws?
The Honourable Tony Ryle.
That is so last century.
Point of order. Grant Robertson.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order has been called. Order.
Point of order,
Grant Robertson.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. I seek leave to table a column by former Prime Minister Mike Moore, which dated the 6th of February 2008, this century.
Leave is sought to table this document from 2008. Is there any objection? There is objection. Question number 4. Point of order. Point of order. The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Mr Speaker, I'm in a little uncharted waters. I raise a point of order that pertains, and I apologise for interrupting question time, that pertains to the Sarah bill before the House. And I raise this because of the pressure of time. My point of order and the advice I seek is this. I have received on my desk a draft copy of a government SOP, and I've taken advice from the clerk some 3 hours and 10 minutes after the committee stage began. And I've taken advice from the clerk, and the clerk has confirmed that an official copy of the SOP has not been provided to their office yet, so I presume this is a draft status. The question is simply this, sir. Given that the agreed timetable for this bill is that it moves back into committee stage directly after question time, and one would assume that would be in the next hour or thereabouts, and then concludes at 6 p.m. with the third reading, That provides the House with less than an hour, possibly a half an hour to an hour, if you include the voting that would have to occur to initiate the third reading. That is all the time that members would have to scrutinise this document. The status of this is draft at this point. So my question is simply this: what avenues do members have to properly scrutinise a page, I think it's about 10-page SOP, in less than an hour, probably half an hour to 40 minutes, sir, to do justice to this important bill?
Order. The Honourable Jerry Brownlee speaking to the point of order.
Mr Speaker, I think it's fair that we have a proper representation of what has occurred here. Firstly, the Labor Party asked for a select committee process or a committee process. We agreed to that. Submissions were called from people and they had a limited amount of time, admittedly, but those submissions were made in good faith and they were heard in good faith by the committee members. And the recommendations that came from those submitters was provided to the government late yesterday, after the Select Committee finished its hearing from me and officials around about 8 o'clock last evening. Officials then worked till the small hours of the morning, 4:30 this morning, preparing a table which is sitting in front of the clerk at the moment, which was made available to members this morning, indicating on each of the recommendations from each of the submitters what the government view was on those recommendations. So there is no desire here to do anything other than accommodate what people have said, if possible. And the consequence of that is that from 7:30 this morning, the drafting team have been working to put what is in that table into the SOP, which is in the language of Parliament, the language of the law, making sure that all T's were crossed and I's were dotted. Mr Speaker, there is no desire in the government to do anything tricky here. I'm about to send a note to a member from the other side who wanted to know what was in here that might not have come from submitters. I can indicate that around clause 40 there's been a wider consideration to make sure that obligations that should fall on one party do so and not on the general taxpayer. But Mr Speaker, in the end, I think it is fair to say that every effort has been made to accommodate the suggestions made by the people who did make a submission. I'm sorry that the drafters could not work fast enough, but officials have not let us down. The timetable could have been moved in a different way, but we didn't get resolution on some of those issues last week, and we are in the situation we're in. But I don't believe that this House's scrutiny of the recommendations from submitters to the Select Committee process has been impeded by the arrival of the SOP at this late point. What was provided to Mr Cosgrove and his colleagues a few moments ago was the document that has gone to the printers. It's being printed. It will be presented on the table of the House as soon as the printing process is completed.
I'll hear the Honourable Member, the Honourable Clayton Cosgrove, further because of that long intervention.
Indeed. The dilemma we have, sir, is this, that Parliament has an inability to scrutinise that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, to put it as the Minister did, unless we have the official document. The document that was provided to us, and I just say that the total timetable for this legislation, as with any legislation, is in the name of the Minister, in his hands. And we were provided, indeed, after I requested last night, a summary document. I'm grateful for that. What the difficulty with this is, this has, one, no parliamentary status, and secondly, it does not give the wording, the definitions, etc., allowing proper scrutiny of that. And the dilemma I face is this, sir, is that again, okay, we've now been told this may be the document, so we have about an hour and a half of total time to debate this, and we have spent 3 odd hours, sir, talking about everything bar the SOP because it's not been available. This is a critical bill, sir, and we want to assist, but we need to scrutinise it.
I think the member has made his point. The matter I wanted elucidated was the status of the document that the member had when he raised his point of order. It would appear to me it's a document that has been provided to him by the Minister prior to the tabling of the document to assist the member in handling the committee stage of this legislation, to provide an advanced copy of the government's proposed SOP. It would seem to me that has been an action that is perhaps courteous to, at the earliest opportunity, provide a document, even though it is not the tabled document. All I can say in relation to the matter is that the timetable of the committee that is not a matter for the Speaker. At the end of this question time, the House will go back into committee, and there are no formal timelines for committee stages. The matter is in the hands of the committee to consider the amendments, and if the matters in the SOP are of real substance and members debate them in great detail, obviously the chair of the committee has to listen very carefully to that detailed debate. But as Speaker, I can't change anything that's happened. It would seem to me that the member has been provided with a copy of the SOP at the earliest opportunity, and as I say, there's nothing the Speaker can do at this stage. Keith Locke, point of order.
Point of order. I think there is a resolution to this problem that might meet with the agreement of the whole House, that leave could be sought, and the Greens would be prepared to do that, to decide that this bill isn't completed today in urgency, but urgency is lifted. We extend the state of emergency for 2 or 3 more weeks and complete the stages and the final parts of the bill in the next sitting period. I think that would meet with the agreement.
We're not going to take time of the House today debating this matter. Of course, the member realises that the government's extremely unlikely to agree to such leave, and that's extremely unlikely solution. I just suggest to members that the House will be back in committee shortly after question time, and the committee will have the opportunity to consider its own debate from that point on. And as Speaker, I can't predetermine any of that. We come to... Is this a further point of order?
Yeah, very short. I just wanted to therefore to ask you if you're in a position to advise us whether it is appropriate or good parliamentary practice to have a 3-hour debate specifically dealing with the government SOP where there is no government SOP.
Order. The member knows the committees can start committee stage debates prior to an SOP being available. There's nothing unusual about that. The House is aware. There's nothing unusual about that. The member's shaking his head. He's entitled to do that. But the member will be aware. He understands the situation that the government has tried to enable submitters to have input into the legislation. Timeframes are such that they are tight timeframes. But the committee stage is in the hands of the committee. The time the committee may take to consider amendments is in its hands, and as Speaker, I can't interfere in that. And there's no further point in pursuing the matter today. I would suggest to the member, though, that the fact he's been provided with a copy of the proposed SOP prior to its tabling is actually helpful, not counterproductive. Point of order. The Honourable Trevor Mallard. It better be a new point of order.
Well, it is.
Because we're not going to waste more time in the House.
I'm going to waste very little time, Mr. Speaker. There's one point of your ruling which I think I would like to relitigate. I think I'm not going to...
Shut up. There will be no further interjection on the government benches.
I'm not going to your final ruling, which of course is correct, that it is within the realm of the government to have late SOPs if they like. I think, though, you said, sir, it is not unusual for this to happen. I think it is in fact, it is not unique, but it's certainly not a normal or a recommended practice.
I accept the point the member's making that it's obviously not an ideal practice. I fully accept that, but perhaps my word should have my language should have perhaps included the fact that it's not common, but it's a practice that happens from time to time, and I fully accept that it's not ideal. But I think the House has taken sufficient time. The fact an SOP has been made available to members prior to its tabling, I believe, is helpful to the House. We come now to I'm advised the SOP is now tabled. We come now to question number 4, Paul Quinn.